Both fear and desire entrap. They entrap in that they hold you in their thought. You know, they're both powerful. They hold you, they keep your mind revolving around the fear or the desire, whatever it is in each case. It takes your attention and your feeding it to become greater. So we give both to the Lord, to God, our Dad. We say, I'm not sure what to do with this, Father. Can I leave it with you? I trust them both to you. I'm not fighting either of them. The battle is yours. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Heavenly Father. It is, you see, in a sense, I think, or at least it reminds me of what the Buddha was understood to be seeking, which is a middle path between attraction and aversion. It's simply neutral, which enables us to look to God with a clear head, rather than cluttered by the dominance of such fear or desire. In a sense, you see, we simply lift our eyes to heaven if we take this middle way in this sense. We're neither repelled nor grasping. We are simply I was going to say looking at it, but possibly not even that. We're independently of it, looking for God's leading, not particularly about it, for or against it, whatever the situation is that's presenting as possible fear or possible desire, attraction. We've simply set it aside to God so that we can return to the reliance on Him and our concentration on Him, not the object of our fear or desire. So I think what I'm saying is I'm not even analysing what's feared or desired. It's not relevant to me. What's relevant to me is what God says. And He might be saying something about something completely different, that both the fear and the desire would be crowding out. But it doesn't crowd it out now, because my mind's not on such. It's just on the presence of God. Herein is peace, as I understand it, and the great blessing of His leading. And even if there were neither, I would still hold to the consolation that I've left it with Him and He's ruling. You see, He's our God. He's not just our dear Dad. I say just, I don't mean that. You know what I mean, don't you? He's also the creator of all, the one who writes the story. So we look to him. Our attention is ever on his presence. And we ask for that, Father. To be loving you. That's our prayer, to be loving you, Father. That loving and valuing you, Dad, pushes everything else aside. May we be devoted to you, Father. Love you. Thank you, Dad. Yes, I should add, what is it again? Hang on a sec. Yes, it is that. It's that the active loving and valuing God pushes the fear and the desire aside. If you simply try to put the fear and desire aside, well, you leave a gap and it simply flows back in again. As soon as you take your pressure away, it just pours back into the space in which it was in your mind, filling up again, you see. So we're not simply moving the fear or the desire out of our mind. We are pushing it out by putting in the loving and the valuing of our Dad. Do you see, we're not just weeding the flower bed, we're planting flowers. Yeah? We put something in that will keep the other out. We're occupied with something else, not simply not occupied with. Otherwise you end up with the problem of, I want you not to think of whatever you do, don't think of pink elephants. And of course people's mind is locked on to why not think of pink elephants, what's wrong with pink elephants, how do I not think of pink, I mustn't think of pink, and all you're doing is thinking of pink elephants. So we don't do it that way. We choose to think on our love and devotion to God, and that doesn't allow the other space. But rather we fill our time with loving and valuing you, Dad. Okay, so it's a much safer strategy than simply trying to lean against the fear or push the desire or push the fear out of our minds. That doesn't work very effectively at all. We put love and devotion to our God in its place. We push it aside in this way. Now our preoccupation is with loving and valuing our God. Thank you, Dad. Well, I seem to have two solutions here. One is to give it to God, the desires and let's keep in the same order, the fears and the desires. And the other is to put love and devotion in. But I think there are two ways of saying the same thing, two sides of the same coin. That the giving it to God puts you in a frame of mind of now God in the picture, and we are in so doing focusing on love and devotion to God. Our attention is on God, not on the fear or the desire. So I'm going to give this to God. That's the taking out. And I'm now focusing on love and devotion to God. That puts the God in its place. Puts the godliness in its place. They are the flowers, the godliness. Our love and devotion is now occupied, is now residing in the place where the fear and devotion might otherwise have been. What do you think of that? What's your view? Well, I suppose I'm saying whatever your view is, try mine and see. I mean, in practice, the next fear or desire you get, have a picture of giving it to God and leaving it there and taking up more of our love and devotion to God in its place. Thank you, Father, for a clear mind, love of you, ready to hear you, Father, loving you. Thank you, Dad. Well, I'm reminded too that I'm not just putting the fear or the desire out of my mind. Also in physical reality, move it out or move myself away from it. So I don't feel conversations about the fear. I tend to keep people off such topics, or the desire. You know, it was a simple thing, wasn't it? You learn to keep away from other people that have dirty jokes. You know, when you're a secular person, you think, oh no, I don't do that. So you sort of, pass on when they make a joke of such sort and change the subject, or almost act as if they hadn't said anything, it just didn't exist. Or if you're not quite so courageous, you sort of give a weak smile but pass on, There are ways of dismissing fear or desire. You don't feed it. You don't necessarily shut them up and say, oh, well, I don't think we should be talking about this, or whatsoever's good and lovely think on these things. I mean, that might work, but it might not. You just are a presence that shifts the conversation away. Or if you can't, you shift yourself away. So, well, I've got to be going now because I've got so-and-so to do. Lovely talking to you. I don't know. It wasn't lovely talking to you. Perhaps you shouldn't say that bit. No point deliberately lying. Just leave it blank. There must be something about being nice to see you. It's good to catch up, but it probably wasn't too good to catch up. But anyway, I don't mean you have a perfect solution here. But in some sense you move yourself away as well from the fear or the desire that's being expressed, that's pouring forth from this individual. Or you move to a circumstance where the fear becomes irrelevant because you're not there. If you can. If you can't, you can't. But you don't have to preoccupy your mind with it. You give the fear to God, or the desire. Thank you, Dad. And incidentally, if giving the fear and or desire to God is not quite the same as loving and seeking God out in your consciousness of God out in mind, well, you can make it so. You can put, in some sense, you can make it the same coin. On one side you have written that you give it to God, and on the other side you have written you seek and love God more. Fill the time with thankfulness for that which is rather more wholesome and a blessing. Bless you. Thank you, Dad. I'm reminded too of people that swear or blaspheme, and usually the two are rather similar. It makes me cringe. I'm surprised when I'm suddenly in such company. You find they do modify it because they notice after a while that you don't. So you can just stay with it and watch and hope for a transformation. I mean, especially if you're concerned for them anyway and you're trying to look past that. Because you want to rescue them into a spirituality that doesn't need that. You want them to have life eternal. So you don't want to dismiss them, really. It's the same with those that have fears. You see, you don't want to dismiss them. But you do want to rescue them. That's quite different. So you don't want to just move away. If you can find a way of handling it, managing it so that it doesn't affect you, and you can minimize it and steer them onto something better, that's good, I think. They may so utterly resist such that, well, you have to think again, perhaps. But very often that's not the case. And especially people that know you, they tend not to. Even as a secular person, I found people did not end up telling me what we called dirty jokes after a while. They just didn't. I think people do not avoid swearing in your company because they know, oh, that's not what he is. In a sense, they respect it in a nice way, I mean. And if they don't, well, perhaps they're hostile. Perhaps they need to be hostile with, well, with someone who also needs to be hostile. And you don't. So, well, you might have to move away a bit then. Probably for the best. Thank you, Dad. I've said before, I had an older friend when I was a secular person, and he said, one thing against you, Marshall. I said, what's this? He was a good chap. He said, well, you do blaspheme. I said, really? I didn't realise that. I mean, I wouldn't swear and so forth. I had as a secular person, not strongly because Mum never swore strongly, but she would say the milder words. And I too. I'd already cured that. He said, well, you use God's name in vain. You say, oh God. Oh God. Oh. And I thought to myself, well, don't do that if it breaks our friendship. He's a good chap to me. So I decided not to do it again. Just like that. I think it was my first steps in being spiritual without realizing it. So it's a blessing to me, and of course, well, he was a blessing to me. He wasn't Christian as such. He was very earnestly following the Old Testament. Didn't seem to have any of that Christian theology, the church theology of atonement, sacrifice, and all that. Thank you, Dad. So I find there is a way, a meaning between the extremes of secular life and the other opposite of religious life. And I would call it the true spiritual life, in the middle way, if you like. It just is. It's not organisational. It's not big churches. It's not self. The market economy. Individual households purely maximising their own self-interest. It's a spirituality that is of loving kindness. It's not a theology of much more than that. But of love and gratitude, of peace and joy, of wisdom, understanding, grace, beauty, hope, shalom, peace, blessing, life eternal, integrity, love, 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 fellowship, communion, praise, worship. A worship that comes of adoration. Devotion. The friendship of God and the friendship of all life, all that God values, all that God has made, all. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Dad. Heavenly Father. Thank you, Dad. Yes, thank you, Dad.